For a fleeting period, he experienced an almost otherworldly strength, requiring potent medication to manage his episodes of potential loss of control. This transformation left everyone around him in awe and apprehension. It was a unanimous decision among his family and medical advisors that his immense energy needed to be channeled into rigorous physical training, a disciplined approach to harnessing his newfound power. They were adamant that he should steer clear of any situations that might trigger a fight or flight response, fearing the unpredictable consequences. If you are not subscribed, I recommend you subscribe and activate the bell so you don't miss any videos. His parents, unwavering in their commitment to this plan, took every measure to ensure Mike's safety and stability. They enrolled him in the school wrestling team, where he could engage in controlled bouts of physical exertion. Additionally, he was introduced to the disciplined art of Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu, a sport that demanded both mental and physical acuity. His mother, desperate to maintain his tranquility and prevent any outbursts, delved into the world of meditation. She tried numerous techniques, from deep breathing exercises to guided visualizations, all to keep Mike calm and centered. Miraculously, these concerted efforts bore fruit. Mike began to transform, not just in physique but in demeanor. The tempestuous energy that once threatened to overwhelm him was now a wellspring of focused strength. He became a seemingly serene individual, much to the relief of his family. However, those who truly understood him, those who had witnessed the depths of his capabilities, affectionately and warily dubbed him the Hulk. This nickname was a testament to the formidable force they knew lay dormant within him. His coaches had a ritual before every match, a calculated strategy to rouse his spirit and awaken the competitive fire within him. They knew that once the Hulk emerged, there was no stopping his march to victory. His opponents, no matter how prepared, stood little chance against the unleashed might he brought to the mat. The thrill of the competition and the cheers of the crowd only fueled his drive further. Yet beneath the surface, there lingered an unspoken fear among his coaches and teammates. They knew his power was a double-edged sword. They speculated in hushed tones about the chaos that might ensue if he ever truly lost control and unleashed his inner beast without restraint. Thus, Mike's journey was one of constant balance and vigilance, a dance between harnessing his extraordinary abilities and maintaining the calm that kept his darker side in check. His life was a testament to the incredible strength that could be wielded with discipline and the ever-present caution required to prevent that strength from becoming a destructive force. Mike's college life progressed without a hitch, marked by a smooth transition into the professional world. He secured a promising job and found his personal life flourishing when he married Karen, his steadfast companion. Life seemed to be aligning perfectly for Mike Sanders. His career was on an upward trajectory, especially after wrapping up a successful negotiation in Portland that promised to significantly boost the cash flow of the software company he was dedicated to. Adding to his joy, he had the chance to reunite with his younger sister, Emily. She had come up from Eugene, where she was immersed in her studies at the University of Oregon. Their dinner at the Courtyard by Marriott was filled with laughter, reminiscing, and heartfelt conversations. It had been a few years since their last meeting, and the time spent together was a balm to his soul. As he made his way back home, anticipation filled his heart. He couldn't wait to see Karen, his wife of nearly 4 wonderful years. The distance imposed by his job was a constant source of discomfort, but it was a reality they both managed with grace. What excited him most was their upcoming 4th wedding anniversary, just 2 days away on Thursday. Mike had gone to great lengths to plan a special celebration. He had secretly booked a reservation at a charming local resort hotel for the weekend, envisioning a romantic escape. Moreover, he had ordered a stunning emerald teardrop necklace, a gift he was eager to present to Karen in the intimate setting of their hotel room. He planned to collect the necklace from the jeweler the following afternoon. However, a slight unease crept in as he prepared to board his flight. He had tried calling Karen's cell phone, but it went straight to voicemail. Undeterred, he attempted to reach her at home, only to be met with the same result. His mind buzzed with curiosity and mild concern about her whereabouts. Despite this, he held on to the excitement of the surprise he had meticulously planned. He envisioned her reaction, the joy and surprise lighting up her face as she received the necklace. Mike's thoughts wandered to their shared memories, the journey they had embarked on together, and the future that lay ahead. As the plane taxied on the runway, Mike glanced out the window, a mix of anticipation and slight worry swirling within him. He hoped everything was all right at home, and that Karen was merely busy with something important. The love and bond they shared had always been his anchor, and he looked forward to reaffirming that connection during their anniversary celebration. With a sigh, he leaned back in his seat, closed his eyes, and let the thoughts of their impending anniversary envelop him in a warm embrace, confident that soon all his concerns would melt away in Karen's loving presence. Perhaps she's just out shopping with one of her friends, he thought, trying to ease the growing concern in his mind. As he thought about Karen, a wave of longing washed over him. Standing at just under 5.5 feet, she possessed an enchanting beauty with her long, wavy blonde hair, sparkling green eyes, and a light complexion that always seemed sun-kissed. Despite her radiant exterior and sweet demeanor, there was one aspect of her personality that Mike struggled with: her intense jealousy. Normally, she was one of the kindest and most loving women he had ever known, but her unfounded accusations drove him to frustration. He loved her deeply and was committed to their marriage, going out of his way to reassure her of his fidelity. Yet her jealousy had reached a point where even a simple business meeting with a female colleague could ignite her suspicions of infidelity. Mike recalled a time when he thought he had finally put her fears to rest. In a moment of exasperation, he had challenged Karen to hire a private investigator to monitor him, hoping that concrete evidence of his faithfulness would put an end to her baseless accusations. He longed for her to see the truth and abandon her unfounded fears. The constant barrage of jealousy and mistrust had begun to wear on him, not just emotionally, but in ways that threatened to unearth secrets he had kept hidden. These secrets were not about infidelity, but they were significant enough that her relentless questioning could bring them to light in an unpleasant manner. His heart rate spiked as he dwelled on her relentless accusations, each one feeling like a dagger to his heart. Despite his love for Karen, her constant mistrust was becoming unbearable. He tried to calm himself with deep breaths, a technique he had been taught, but his rising anger and frustration proved too strong. He felt the heat rise to his face, a burning sensation that signaled he needed to regain his composure quickly. Reaching into his pocket, he pulled out a small packet of pills, a safeguard for moments just like this. He took one, the familiar bitter taste reminding him of the many times he had needed this crutch. Slowly, as the medication took effect, he felt the tightness in his chest ease and his heartbeat slow to a normal pace. The minutes passed, and with them, his anxiety began to wane. He leaned back in his seat, closing his eyes and focusing on calming thoughts. He pictured Karen's smile, the warmth of her embrace, and the love they shared despite their challenges. He hoped that the upcoming anniversary celebration would serve as a reminder of their bond and help dispel the shadows of doubt that seemed to linger. He was determined to make it a special occasion, a moment to reaffirm their love and commitment to each other. As the plane continued its journey, Mike's thoughts slowly shifted from the worries of jealousy to the anticipation of surprising Karen with the necklace and the romantic weekend he had meticulously planned. The man sitting next to Mike observed him with growing concern. "Are you okay, sir?" he inquired gently. "Do you need me to call for assistance?" Mike gave a reassuring shake of his head. "No, but thanks for your concern. It's just an old heart condition. I have medication for it." The man nodded, sitting back in his seat but continuing to keep a watchful eye on Mike, just in case. As the plane descended and finally landed, Mike felt a mix of relief and anticipation. He grabbed his luggage swiftly and headed towards his car in the short-term parking lot. Sitting in his car, he attempted to call Karen once more, but once again, it went straight to voicemail. Frustration bubbled within him as he also tried calling the house, only to receive the same response. Where on earth could she be? He wondered, feeling a knot of worry tightening in his chest. Starting the car, he drove home with a mind full of uneasy thoughts. Upon pulling into the garage, he immediately noticed that Karen's car was absent. It struck him as unusual since it was already around 7 p.m., and she typically returned from work by 6. Maybe she decided to go out with some friends from work for a drink, he mused. Although it was a rare occurrence, he never minded her taking some time to unwind. However, she usually called or texted him to keep him informed, especially knowing he was coming home today. Their reunions after his trips were moments they both cherished. He gathered his belongings and entered the dimly lit house, his footsteps echoing in the quiet. He put his things away methodically and headed downstairs, hoping to find a note from Karen explaining her absence. The silence was heavy, and there was no note to be found. With a sigh, he made himself a cup of coffee, trying to shake off the unsettling feeling. This is odd, he thought. She always made a point of letting him know if she would be out, so the lack of communication was troubling. As he sipped his coffee, his mind raced with possibilities. Where could she be? Why hadn't she left a note or message? The house felt unusually empty and quiet, amplifying his sense of unease. He thought back to their last conversation, trying to recall if there had been any hints or indications of her plans for the evening. The more he thought about it, the more perplexed he became. He hoped everything was all right and that there was a simple explanation for her absence. Trying to calm his nerves, he decided to wait a little longer before making any more calls. He wanted to give her the benefit of the doubt, but the silence in the house was deafening, and the unanswered questions gnawed at his mind. Suddenly, his phone rang. Glancing at the screen, he saw Karen's name flash up. Relief washed over him as he quickly answered. "Karen," he said urgently, "where are you?" "Mike, I'm so sorry. I was getting ready for tonight and didn't realize you had called until just a few minutes ago." "What were you getting ready for?" Mike asked, a mix of curiosity and confusion in his voice. "It's a little surprise," Karen replied with a hint of excitement. "Some friends and I wanted to surprise you when you got home tonight. Why don't you come over so we can celebrate?" "Sure. Where are you?" She provided an address, and he jotted it down quickly. "What is this anyway? Is it a club or a restaurant or something?" Karen chuckled softly. "An old friend of mine has a private club at his house. We decided to put something together for you, a combination welcome home and anniversary party." "That sounds like fun," Mike said, his earlier worries starting to fade. Karen's laughter rang through the phone. "Yes, I promise it'll be a lot of fun. Wear something casual. Okay." "Okay. I'll see you soon." "See you, babe," she said before ending the call. As he hung up, a strange feeling lingered. She hadn't said she loved him, which felt odd given the supposed surprise anniversary party. Something about the way she spoke made him uneasy, but he brushed it aside, attributing it to the unexpected nature of the evening. He went upstairs, showered, shaved, and dressed in blue jeans and a polo shirt, all the while feeling a mix of anticipation and apprehension. He looked up the address on Google Maps and noticed it was in a relatively rough part of town. Who did she know that lived there? He wondered. Most of the people at her insurance office didn't seem like the type to reside in such an area. He knew she had a past with some rough characters during her younger days, but believed she had long since left that behind. With a sigh, he locked up the house, got into his car, and entered the address into his GPS. Following the directions, he navigated through the city until he reached his destination. His eyebrows furrowed in surprise and concern as he pulled up to a medium-sized house surrounded by a chain-link fence. The yard was dotted with pickups and motorcycles, none of which he recognized. His sense of unease grew as he parked his car and made his way to the front door. Standing on the porch, he took a moment to gather himself. The unfamiliar vehicles and the location made him wary. Taking a deep breath, he knocked on the door, hoping that the evening would indeed turn out to be the joyous celebration Karen had promised. A large man in a t-shirt and jeans opened the door when Mike knocked. Holding a beer, he eyed Mike with a mixture of curiosity and mild suspicion. The sound of rap music thumped from inside. "Yeah," the man asked, his tone gruff. "I'm Mike Sanders," Mike replied, trying to sound confident. "My wife Karen asked me to meet her here. I hope I have the right address." The man's lips curled into a smile, but it didn't reach his eyes. He extended his hand. "You must be Karen's old man. You can call me Ray. We've been expecting you. Come on in." Mike stepped inside, immediately feeling the weight of several pairs of eyes on him. The front room was occupied by a group of large men, all exuding an intimidating presence. "Hey everyone, the man of the hour is finally here," Ray announced. The men nodded and smiled, but there was an edge to their expressions that made Mike uneasy. He forced a smile in return. "Where's Karen?" he asked, scanning the room for any sign of her. Ray chuckled, and the others followed suit. "Oh, she's downstairs getting ready for the main event," he said. "Want a beer?" Yeah, sure," Mike replied, hoping a drink would calm his nerves. One of the men handed him a cold bottle, which he accepted with a nod. "Thanks," he said, taking a tentative sip. "So, what is this main event?" Mike asked, trying to keep his voice steady. "That's the surprise," Ray replied with a smirk. "Your old lady wanted to do something special for your anniversary and asked us to help her out. I'm afraid you have me at a disadvantage." "Who are you guys?" Mike asked, his eyes darting from one face to another. Ray pointed to each man in turn. "Well, that over there is Tom," he said, indicating a burly guy leaning against the wall. "Over there is Jerry, and that guy standing next to him is Sam." Mike nodded at each name. "That big fella back there we call Bull. I'm sure you can understand why." Mike's gaze settled on Bull, a hulking figure with rippling muscles standing by the kitchen table. The atmosphere was thick with tension, and Mike noticed a large knife sheathed in a scabbard on Jerry's hip. The sight made his stomach churn. Trying to maintain composure, Mike took another sip of his beer. "Nice to meet you all," he said, forcing another smile. "Karen mentioned something about a celebration." Ray's smile widened, but it still didn't seem genuine. "Yeah, she's real excited about it. Wanted everything to be perfect." Mike's mind raced. He tried to piece together what kind of main event Karen could have planned that involved these men. His unease grew with each passing second. He knew he needed to keep his wits about him and figure out what was happening. "So when does this surprise start?" he asked, hoping to get more information. "Pretty soon," Ray said, taking a swig of his beer. "Just relax and enjoy yourself." Mike nodded, but relaxing was the last thing on his mind. He glanced around the room again, noting the exits and trying to formulate a plan in case things went south. He hoped Karen would appear soon, and that her surprise would dispel the ominous feeling that hung in the air. "Yeah, and you're all Karen's friends?" Mike asked, skepticism lacing his voice. "Yep," Tom replied with a casual shrug. "Been friends for a while, though we haven't seen much of her since she married you." "She never mentioned any of you to me before," Mike said, feeling a knot of unease tightening in his stomach. Ray smirked. "I'm not surprised. Most people try to avoid us as much as they can." "Why is that?" Mike inquired, trying to keep his tone light. "Well," Ray said, leaning in a bit closer, "we're not exactly the types people want to be seen with, if you know what I mean." Mike's eyes darted around the room, still no sign of Karen. "So where is she?" he asked, his patience wearing thin. "Downstairs," Ray said nonchalantly. You should go down and say hello." Mike finished his beer in one gulp and made his way to the basement stairs, his heart pounding with a mix of anxiety and dread. As he descended, the dim light from a single bulb hanging from a chain illuminated the scene below. His breath caught in his throat when he saw Karen. She was sitting in a chair, clad only in her underwear, looking dazed and vulnerable. Surrounding her were about a dozen men, their eyes fixed on her. "Karen," Mike shouted, his voice trembling with panic. "What the hell is going on here?" Before he could move, a pair of strong arms grabbed him from behind, holding him in place. "Hey, settle down, buddy," one of the men said in a mocking tone. "We just wanted to give you a little surprise. Don't go getting all upset on us now." Mike struggled against the grip, but the man holding him was far too strong. Ray sauntered up to him, a sinister smile playing on his lips. "This is how we do things around here, buddy. Looks like your wife wanted us to give you a very special anniversary gift." Mike's blood boiled with a mix of fury and disbelief. "Let her go," he demanded, his voice raw with emotion. Ray shook his head slowly. "No can do, pal. This is all part of the plan." Karen looked up, her eyes wide with desperation and fear. "Mike," she said, her voice trembling, "I'm so sorry. I didn't mean for this to happen. Please, don't get angry." Mike felt a wave of betrayal wash over him. "I can't believe you did this to me, Karen," he said, his voice shaking with rage. "How could you let them do this?" Tears streamed down Karen's face. "I made a mistake. Please, just let this go. We'll talk about it later." "No way in hell," Mike snapped, still struggling to break free. "We're not letting this go." Ray stepped closer, his expression hardening. "You've had enough of this little party. Time for you to leave. But don't worry, your wife will be taken good care of." Mike fought harder, but it was futile. The men dragged him up the stairs, ignoring his protests, and threw him out the front door. He stumbled and fell, quickly scrambling to his feet. He ran to his car, his mind racing with shock and fury. He tried calling Karen again, but her phone went straight to voicemail. He started his car and sped off, his heart pounding with a mix of rage and pain. As he drove away, the reality of what had just happened began to sink in. His world felt shattered, and he couldn't fathom how he was going to face Karen again. The betrayal and fear clawed at him, leaving him with a sense of profound loss and uncertainty. "Thanks, Jim, I appreciate that," Mike said after he managed to calm down. Exhausted, he showered and went to bed, the events of the night replaying in his mind. The next day, he took decisive action. He went to the jewelry shop and canceled the order for Karen's necklace, paying a small restocking fee, but getting most of his money back. He also canceled the hotel reservation and had the charges reversed. Determined to move forward, he called around and set an appointment to see Jenny Hawkins, attorney at law, about filing for a divorce on Friday. Just as he finished eating lunch, his phone rang. He looked at the caller ID and saw it was Karen's parents. Bracing himself, he took a deep breath and answered. "Hello, Wes." "Mike, what the hell is going on?" demanded Marge, his mother-in-law. "Karen called from the county jail. She said she's been arrested and they're holding her without bail. Did you do something?" Mike couldn't believe the nerve of this woman. He silently counted to 10, taking several deep breaths before responding. "Did she tell you why she was arrested?" he asked, his voice steady. "She said it was all some kind of misunderstanding on your part," Marge replied, her tone accusatory. "On my part? You mean she didn't tell you that she plotted to have me tied up, forced me to watch her have sex with multiple men, and then was going to have me sexually assaulted by one of her male friends? Didn't she tell you about that?" There was a stunned silence on the other end of the line. Mike could almost hear the gears turning in Marge's head as she processed what he had just said. "No, she didn't mention any of that," Marge finally replied, her voice much quieter. "Well, that's what happened," Mike said, feeling a surge of anger and betrayal. "She set me up, Marge. I walked into a nightmare last night, and it was all orchestrated by Karen." "But why? Why would she do something like that?" Marge asked, disbelief evident in her voice. "Your guess is as good as mine," Mike replied. "Maybe she thought it was some sick joke, or maybe she thought it would be a fun surprise. But it wasn't. It was a nightmare. And now she's facing the consequences." "Mike, I don't know what to say," Marge said, her voice trembling. "This doesn't sound like the Karen I know." "Well, it's the Karen I experienced last night," Mike said bitterly. "I'm done, Marge. I'm filing for divorce. I can't stay married to someone who would do something like this." "Please, Mike. Let's talk about this," Marge pleaded. "Maybe there's another side to the story." "There's no other side," Mike said firmly. "I'm done. I'm sorry you had to hear it this way, but I need to move on from this nightmare. Goodbye." He hung up the phone, feeling a mix of relief and sorrow. The conversation had been necessary, but it also marked the end of a significant chapter in his life. He knew there would be more difficult conversations ahead, but he was resolute in his decision. Karen's actions had crossed a line, and there was no going back. "What? Why would she do such a thing?" Marge asked, her voice tinged with disbelief. "Because she saw a picture of me having dinner with my little sister and thought I was having an affair. The woman is nuts, and tomorrow I'm seeing an attorney and filing for divorce." "You can't be serious." "Look, I know you're probably upset, but surely you can understand how she would feel. What would you do if you saw a picture of her eating lunch with a man?" "I would ask her about it. I wouldn't fly off the handle the way she did." "Look, Marge, you have no idea what your daughter did. And there's no way in hell I can overlook it. I've been dealing with her insane jealousy since we got married. I'm tired of it. It ends now. As far as the divorce is concerned, let me ask you, Marge. If we reverse the roles and I tie her up and force her to watch me have sex with other women and then have her assaulted by one of them, would you still ask your daughter to remain married to me?" Marge was silent, struggling to find words to respond. Mike continued, his voice unwavering. "Don't be a hypocrite, Marge. You know very well that what I am doing to your daughter is right with that." He ended the call. When she tried calling back, he sent it straight to voicemail. Curious and determined to find more answers, Mike went into the second bedroom where he and Karen had their home computers set up. Sitting down at her computer, he fired it up and quickly logged in, knowing her passwords. Once inside her email client, he was shocked by what he found. There was an email from something called Jenkins Investigations. He opened it and saw an attached document and a photo. The photo showed him and his sister having dinner, the very picture Karen had thrown in his face. The report was thorough. It detailed how target Mike Sanders had dinner with a much younger woman, who was later identified as Emily Sanders, a senior at the University of Oregon and Mike's youngest sister. The document explicitly stated that after dinner, Emily left the hotel and Mike went to his room alone. It emphasized that at no point was Mike seen engaging in any inappropriate behavior with anyone, male or female. The report concluded with a clear statement: if Karen had bothered to read it, she would have known he was innocent. Instead, she had simply seen the photo and jumped to her erroneous conclusion. Mike felt a mix of anger and sorrow as he read through the report. The extent of Karen's irrational jealousy was laid bare, and it hurt to see how easily she could believe the worst about him. But this was the final straw. Her actions were not just impulsive or paranoid, they were cruel and damaging. His divorce decision was reaffirmed with each line he read. Shutting down the computer, Mike leaned back in the chair, letting out a long, weary sigh. The betrayal he felt was deep, but so was his resolve to move forward. He couldn't live under the shadow of Karen's baseless accusations and erratic behavior any longer. Tomorrow, he would see Jenny Hawkins, and he would start the process of reclaiming his life. He pointed out the report and continued digging through Karen's emails. What he found made his blood run cold. There were several messages from her to Jerry, falsely claiming that Mike was cheating on her and expressing a desire for revenge. Jerry's responses were chillingly enthusiastic, providing her with information about a website where she could enact her retribution. As Mike read further, his anger and disbelief grew. The emails detailed how last night's horrific events were meticulously planned. Jerry had provided explicit instructions on how to humiliate Mike, including videotaping the assault and uploading it to the website. Mike printed off these emails, his hands shaking with rage, and continued to delve deeper into Karen's online activities. Her browser history revealed visits to several similar sites, confirming her sinister intentions. When Mike checked the website Jerry recommended, he saw horrifyingly familiar sample videos. They depicted husbands tied down, forced to watch as their wives engaged in sexual acts with multiple men, all while degrading their spouses. The final act of humiliation involved the husbands being coerced into participation. To his utter shock, Mike recognized the men in these videos: Ray, Tom, Jerry, Sam, Bull, and the other two men whose names he hadn't caught. It became clear they were part of a coordinated operation, regularly creating such videos for the site. What was even more appalling was that these videos were accessible to anyone willing to pay a premium fee. Mike knew enough about the legalities of such content to understand that release forms were typically required to publish these videos. He had never signed any such form and doubted the other men had either. The realization that Karen had planned to involve him in this vile scheme without his consent was infuriating. Determined to take action, Mike picked up his phone and called Detective Harris. When the detective answered, Mike quickly explained the situation. "Detective Harris, this is Mike Sanders. I have evidence that my wife and a group of men planned and executed an assault on me last night. They intended to videotape it and publish it online without my consent. I have emails, browser history, and other proof. I need to see you right away." "Calm down, Mr. Sanders. Bring everything you have to the station. We'll look into it immediately," Detective Harris replied, his tone serious. Mike gathered all the printed emails and other documents, feeling a grim sense of purpose. As he prepared to leave for the police station, he knew this was only the beginning. He was determined to see that Karen and her accomplices faced justice for what they had done. The betrayal he felt was profound, but so was his resolve to ensure that no one else would suffer at their hands. "Harris," the detective said when he answered. "Detective, this is Mike Sanders. I have some information here you may find interesting," Mike said. "Can you come to my house?" "Sure. Let me finish what I'm doing, and I'll be right over." "Thanks," Mike said before ending the call. As he waited for Harris, Mike conducted a thorough search to determine who owned the site. The registration was anonymous, but he knew that law enforcement could subpoena the records. He also discovered the hosting company used for the site and printed that information for Harris. About a half hour later, the doorbell rang. Mike opened the door to find Detective Harris standing there. "Thanks for coming," Detective Mike said, stepping aside to let him in. "You have something for me?" Harris asked, getting straight to the point. "Yes, it's in my computer room," Mike said, leading Harris upstairs. He handed the detective the printouts and explained what he had found. Harris examined the documents carefully. "This corroborates what we found at the house," he said. "From what we saw, they've done this to several men." "What about release forms?" Mike asked. "We found release forms signed by the wives. Even your wife signed a release form. We're still going through everything, though," Harris explained. "So she knew this was going on the internet?" Mike asked, feeling a fresh wave of anger. Looks that way, Harris confirmed. But what about the husbands? Mike pressed. Did they sign anything? I don't recall seeing anything like that, but as I said, we're still going through all the evidence. Look, I'm going to need to confiscate your wife's computer for evidence. Mike nodded, understanding the necessity. Of course, whatever you need. Harris began disconnecting the computer. We'll also need to conduct a forensic analysis of all the data on here. It might take some time. I understand, Mike said, his mind racing with thoughts of the betrayal and the disturbing revelations. As Harris prepared to leave with the computer, he turned to Mike. We'll do everything we can to get to the bottom of this. Your cooperation is crucial. Make sure you keep any other evidence you find and contact me immediately. Thank you, Detective, Mike said, feeling a glimmer of hope amidst the turmoil. After Harris left, Mike sat down, trying to process everything. The revelation that Karen had knowingly signed a release form and conspired with those men to humiliate him online was a blow he was struggling to absorb. But now, with the police involved and the evidence being collected, he hoped that justice would prevail. Determined to stay proactive, he decided to compile all the remaining documents and any other potential evidence he could find. He wanted to ensure that no stone was left unturned in holding Karen and her accomplices accountable. This nightmare was far from over, but he was resolute in his pursuit of truth and justice. Go ahead. I'd like to keep these printouts for my attorney, though. The files are still there in her email, Mike said. Harris nodded after a moment of consideration. Sure, but don't destroy them. After Harris left with Karen's computer, Mike sat at his machine and had a sudden brainstorm. He began searching some of the video sites and found several lengthy videos produced by the site in question. He scanned through them and saw that in each one, the husband was treated much like he was, while the wife engaged with all the other men except for Jerry. Each video ended with Jerry engaging in sex with the husbands. Mike felt a wave of nausea as he watched. He looked back through the email thread he had printed from Karen's computer and read it carefully. There it was in black and white. Just so you know, Jerry had written, we usually end the session with some sex involving the husband. Are you okay with that? Oh, definitely, Karen had replied. How far does it go? As far as you want, so long as your husband agrees, Jerry responded. I'd like to see him get screwed, Karen wrote back. Can you do that? Sure, Jerry wrote, but he has to agree. Don't worry about that. I'll make him agree, Karen replied. Mike felt his blood pressure begin to rise and stepped back from the computer, taking deep breaths. Unfortunately, that wasn't working, so he took another pill and went downstairs. He couldn't stand to be exposed to any more of this. The next day, he went to see Jenny Hawkins about a divorce. He made a copy of Karen's emails and took them with him. One copy would be for Jenny and the other he intended to present to Karen's parents. As he sat in Jenny's office, he recounted the horrific events and handed over the evidence. Jenny's expression turned from professional detachment to concern as she read through the emails. Mike, this is shocking. I will ensure we proceed with this divorce swiftly and also look into possible criminal charges against Karen and her associates, Jenny said firmly. Thank you, Jenny. I want to make sure this doesn't happen to anyone else. They need to be held accountable. I completely understand, Jenny replied. We'll get through this. After he met with Jenny, Mike felt a small sense of relief. One step toward justice had been taken, but he still had to confront Karen's parents. He needed them to know the truth about their daughter's actions, no matter how painful it would be. Later that afternoon, Mike drove to Karen's parents' house, feeling a mix of dread and determination. When he arrived, Marge and her husband, Bill, welcomed him with concerned expressions. Mike, what's going on? Marge asked, her voice tinged with worry. "I need to show you something," Mike said, handing them copies of the emails. "This is why Karen is in jail." As they read through the documents, their faces paled. Marge looked up, tears in her eyes. "I can't believe this. I wish it wasn't true, but it is. She planned everything with these men, and they were going to humiliate and assault me." Bill shook his head in disbelief. "Mike, we had no idea. We're so sorry." "I appreciate that, but you needed to know the truth. I'm filing for divorce, and I wanted you to understand why." Marge nodded, unable to speak. Bill put an arm around her, offering comfort. "We understand, Mike. We'll support whatever you need to do." "Thank you," Mike said, feeling a weight lift slightly from his shoulders. "I just want to move on from this nightmare." As he left their house, he felt a sense of closure. The truth was out, and now it was time to focus on rebuilding his life. He drove away, hopeful that the worst was behind him, and determined to find peace and happiness once more. He arrived at Jenny Hawkins' office a few minutes early and was promptly escorted in. After brief introductions, Mike explained his situation, detailing the horrific events and showing her the email thread between Karen and Jerry. Jenny listened intently, making notes as he spoke. When she read the email thread, she shook her head in disbelief. "You know, I thought I had seen it all. Fortunately for you, this state allows for divorce on the grounds of adultery, cruelty, and abuse. I think this covers all three of those situations. You say she was arrested and is being held without bail." "Yes," Mike confirmed. Jenny turned to her computer and started typing. After a few moments, she nodded. "I see here that she was arraigned yesterday and was slapped with a whole slew of charges: spousal abuse, sexual assault, conspiracy to commit assault, fraud, and illegal imprisonment, for starters. The judge felt she was dangerous enough to keep in custody. It also looks like her accomplices are being held on multiple charges very similar to hers. And you say these men operate a website that posts this trash to the internet for money?" "Yes," Mike replied. "I found a few of their videos, and they're all pretty much the same thing." "Did they explain this to you before they tied you down?" Jenny asked. "No," Mike said, his voice firm with indignation. "Did they have you sign any release forms or anything?" "No, nothing like that." Jenny sighed. "This is a clear-cut case of abuse and exploitation. We'll proceed with the divorce on these grounds. Given her legal troubles, this should go relatively smoothly. We'll also explore any civil actions against the website and its operators for damages." Relieved, Mike thanked Jenny and left her office, feeling a sense of resolution starting to form. As he settled back into his routine, Mike found that the house seemed much quieter without Karen. He relished the newfound peace and enjoyed the freedom to do what he wanted without her constant accusations. The therapy sessions with Rhonda were incredibly beneficial. She taught him relaxation techniques that helped alleviate his anxiety and stress. Each session brought a sense of calm and clarity that he hadn't felt in years. Mike stayed in close contact with Jenny, who advised that they wait until after Karen's trial to serve the divorce papers. She reasoned that the divorce would likely proceed more smoothly if Karen was a convicted felon. This period of waiting allowed Mike to heal and reflect on his life. He focused on his work, his relationship with his sister, and rebuilding his emotional well-being. The betrayal had been deep, but with each passing day he felt a little stronger and more determined to move forward. He knew that the road ahead would have its challenges, but he was ready to face them, confident that he was on the path to a brighter, more peaceful future. The day of Karen's trial finally arrived, and Mike was prepared to testify, eager to see justice served. As he took the stand, he recounted the harrowing events in detail. The jury listened in stunned silence as the district attorney presented overwhelming evidence, including Mike's testimony and the damning email exchanges. The shock was palpable, and it took the jury only a couple of hours to return with guilty verdicts on all charges. The judge showed no leniency, sentencing Karen to the maximum possible under state law 20 years, with eligibility for parole in 15 years. As she was led out of the courtroom, a process server stepped forward, verifying her identity before handing her a manila envelope. "You've been served," he said. Defeated and overwhelmed, Karen signed the papers and handed them back. "Have a good day," the server added as he accepted the signed documents. Karen looked at Mike with tears streaming down her face, but he simply looked away, his resolve unwavering. The deputies escorted her out and into the van that would transport her to the state women's prison. The trials against Ray and his crew took significantly longer. Detective Harris had uncovered a wealth of evidence indicating that they had victimized up to 15 men over the past 18 months. They discovered release forms that appeared to be signed by the husbands they targeted, but upon investigation, many of the men confirmed that these forms were signed under duress and after the fact. To make matters worse, the site owners had posted personal information about the men they targeted. This egregious violation of privacy had devastating consequences. At least 3 victims had committed suicide due to the humiliation and trauma they endured. The cumulative impact of these revelations painted a grim picture of systemic abuse and exploitation. By the end of the trials, all the men involved were sentenced to 25 years of hard labor. The website was dismantled, and the victims, or at least those whom Jenny's team of attorneys could locate, received substantial financial compensation. This not only bankrupted Ray and his associates, but also served as a measure of justice for the victims. The hosting providers, eager to avoid further legal battles, settled with the men, adding to the compensation fund. As the dust settled, Mike felt a profound sense of closure. Justice had been served, and the people who had caused so much pain were held accountable. He could now focus on rebuilding his life, free from the shadows of betrayal and fear. The future, once bleak and uncertain, now seemed filled with possibilities and hope. Mike nearly broke down crying when Jenny presented him with a $2 million check. While he appreciated the restitution, the money did very little to soothe his broken heart. "You're a good man, Mike Sanders," she told him. "There are lots of good women out there who would love to be with you. You'll find her." "Thanks, Jenny." "Maybe one day," Mike replied, forcing a small smile. He continued seeing his therapist, Rhonda, who helped him deal with his lingering issues. Over the next 2 years, Mike buried himself in his work and dated periodically. Only in the last couple of months had he started seeing the same woman more than once. "He's got a lot of issues to deal with," Rhonda wrote in her notes, "but on the upside, he hasn't had any more episodes and seems to be moving forward. I think he'll do just fine in the long run. At least I hope so," she thought. A few days later, Mike found himself at a local bar, meeting a man for a brief, tense conversation that lasted no more than 10 minutes. After their discussion, Mike walked out to his car and waited. The man eventually approached, picked up the small briefcase Mike had discreetly placed on the ground, and both men exchanged nods before walking away. 5 days later, Jenny contacted Mike with unexpected news. Karen, who had become pregnant from the assault on that fateful night, had suffered a miscarriage when she was attacked by 3 large women in the prison bathroom. She was bleeding heavily and had been taken to the hospital. The injuries were so severe that Karen would never be able to conceive again. People like her should never breed, Mike thought to himself, feeling a dark sense of justice. Despite the turmoil of the past few years, Mike began to see a glimmer of hope. He focused on rebuilding his life, grateful for the support of friends like Jenny and the guidance of Rhonda. Slowly but surely, he started to find peace and look forward to a future that no longer seemed so bleak. 7 days later, Ray and Tom met their end when a massive riot erupted in the prison during lunch hours. The chaos was brutal, and both men were killed in the violence. 2 days after that, Sam was found hanging in his cell, an apparent suicide. 3 days later, Jake attempted a daring escape, trying to scale the prison wall with 2 other inmates. The guards opened fire, and Jake was killed instantly while the other 2 somehow escaped unharmed. Bull and 2 others died under mysterious circumstances soon after their autopsies revealed they had been poisoned. Jerry, however, thought he was the luckiest of them all. He managed to escape the prison with 2 other inmates and crossed the American border into Mexico. He believed he was free, unaware that his so-called escape had been orchestrated. His partners in crime led him straight to Baja. Feeling jubilant, Jerry was dining at a local diner when he met a beautiful woman. They danced together, and she invited him to her home. Jerry, grinning from ear to ear, followed her, anticipating a night of passion. In the darkness of her bedroom, Jerry was suddenly struck from behind, and everything went black. When he regained consciousness, he found himself tied to a chair. Panic set in as he struggled against his bonds. A man stepped into the light, holding a phone in front of Jerry's face. "Hello, Jerry. Hope you remember me," the voice on the phone said. It was Mike. "I guess my friend has treated you well. I've asked him to be gentle and stretch the night as far as possible, just like you told me once. I promise you'll love it." Jerry tried to scream, but his mouth was gagged. Fear gripped him as the roaring sound of a chainsaw filled the room. A man dressed in a yellow raincoat and a gas mask stood before him, holding the chainsaw. The man walked closer, his eyes cold and unfeeling. "Do you like stew?" the man asked, his voice menacingly calm. Jerry's muffled screams filled the room, but there was no escape. The nightmare he had orchestrated for others had come full circle, and now he was the one trapped in an unimaginable horror. His luck had finally run out. As we conclude this intense and dramatic story, we are left to ponder the profound and often harsh lessons about justice, betrayal, and the human capacity for resilience. What have you learned from Mike's journey and the fates of those who wronged him? Please take a moment to reflect and share one thing you have learned from this story and how you plan to apply it in your life. Your insights could be a powerful source of inspiration and wisdom for others. If you liked this video, please leave your comment below, and don't forget to like, share, and subscribe to our YouTube channel for more captivating stories and valuable lessons. Thank you for watching.